Hopefully the geese won't be too loud this morning. You got any geese over there?
No, I have turkeys actually in my concrete jungle that I live in. 100% opposite of your place. We actually have turkeys that lose their way, but my apartment is like has enough green space that they just like there's like gangs. Like eight of them will just walk down the concrete and just they like give you these mean looks, and it is nothing like what you have. But no, I've seen a geese or two around here at some points.
I've started working with a VA over in the Philippines, and her rooster just goes nonstop every time we're on a call. Um, a team over there, and there's just roosters going nonstop, and she's like apologizing for the rooster. I'm like, no, it's good because I'm always like worried about the geese going mental. I'm on phone calls, like sometimes I'm doing, like sales calls, introducing people to what I do and how I do it or whatever, and the geese just start barking at me, and I'm like, this is it's just the geese, it's not the kids.
Yeah, it's part of the ambiance. Like our show we did, it was actually awesome because I know we were talking a little bit about your farm and you got that vibe in the background and I mean the whole show is about how important environment is, So it was perfect. It wouldn't have been the same without a few geese. But yeah, there's not much. There's only fire trucks here that occasionally will get in the way of any sort of audio or my kids crying. But so a little different vibe around here.
What's it like being a performance coach in the middle of a mecca like that, in the middle of 10 million people?
Not as busy as you'd think. It's funny. Like I feel like my heart is a kind of a country boy. My job before here was in Wilmington, Ohio, which is like halfway between two major cities, but it's an hour away from either of them. It's in the middle of a bunch of cornfields, and I just love that. Like I just love kind of being in a community, but it's a lot more just natural but I will say it's like the amount of people around here that you can like just get connected with, the amount of brilliant people that you can have a conversation in person with is fantastic. And so I really, I don't know. There's always going to be a best of both worlds, but it's a good place. I think Berkeley definitely chose me. So I'm excited to be here for now.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, it must be a bit of a melting pot of ideas. Like I think from Australia, that's what people would tend to think about, that part of the world where you are. Has it really evolved your thinking, do you think, like being in that environment?
Yeah, I absolutely, man. And I don't know if it's necessarily the environment and I don't want to get too political, but like, I mean, I grew up in the conservative Midwest United States, super Republican and all these things. And it's always like this city in particular is always like this heart of liberalism, right? And like, so it's good to actually be like, I firmly believe like anything in life, training, nutrition, which I know you've gone in this route, but like this, find the opposite, go like to both ends of the spectrum and experience it and feel it yourself before you make a judgment. Like you have to live it. And so, yeah, there's things
there's the hippies.
Yeah, no, there is things that I absolutely love about being here and like the progressive nature here, but there's also actually things I don't like. And so I don't want to get into that too much, but like one of the things it's so cool. Like if I like the most weird out there conferences you could imagine are always like here, like for example, or even just like, you want to do ecstatic dance. Okay, cool. That's right in town, 6 blocks from my house. Like, whereas if I go back to the Midwest, I don't know, I probably have to drive like 3 hours, like to go to something that's just, so you have those types of things. And even like I was reading Bruce Lipton's book recently on it's like epigenetics and the subconscious mind and hypnosis.
Spontaneous evolution? Or biology belief?
Biology belief, yeah. And he was talking about Psych K and like this system that works with applied kinesiology and muscle testament and belief systems to reprogram people. And I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. And I'm like, oh, there's a seminar on that 20 minutes from my house, So it's all these things. And I think, when you get to the new wave of ideas, you have to like vet it a little bit, but I want to experience everything. You know what? I'll experience it first and I'll tell you what I think. I'm not at this point in my life, just sign me up. Like I'm going to do it. And then I'll tell you what I think later.
But Joel, it has to be evidence-based.
Yes. I'm very aware of that. But yeah. Well,
what's your take on that? Like there's that orthodoxy in exercise science, sports science of like, if there's not like 5 or 6 people that are spouting it as off as being the gospel of truth, then you're a quack and you should get out of town. You know what I mean? Like, how does that fit with you? You've obviously got this eclectic podcast, and you're not afraid to have a guest on who might stir the pot a little bit. What's your take on that kind of orthodoxy?
I tell you, I absolutely love stirring the pot, but I'll say this: like, I get it, like I understand that we look at 100 years ago, the snake oil salesman, or we look at like medicine. If you read like the Emperor of All Maladies, and just how far these fields have gone, and how young we probably even are in our own field, like we're gonna make mistakes. And so, like with the evidence-based thing, and well, this is people say about me, like this isn't 100% true. This is easy for anybody to say. I really don't care what other people think about me. And I mean, I do, but I think most of me doesn't. And so I don't care if someone says Joel's a quack, Joel's, because at the end of the day, it's about, okay, look, like I've felt this and I've experienced this, and I have allowed my intuition to experience this. And I think that we just, as a society, undervalue our intuition. And I heard this, it was on a podcast. It was like, I think it was Satori Prime, which is what personal development one I really like, is they were talking about people who are overly evidence-based. And I look at it as a spectrum. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, like it's all intuition and no, the research and data is important. It is. And I'm not going to dismiss that, but people who are like, or the show me a study, I won't believe this unless I have a study, they hear something they don't like, where's the research? That is pure fear speaking. Like there's a fear of the unknown. Ultimately, you could say a fear of death in there if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. There's always a fear-based paradigm in people who are just overly evidence-based. And so it's a balance. It's a spectrum. You have to, yes, we want to be better at honing our own intuition. And there's a lot of books and methods and, meditation and all these things to get more in your own intuition. But yeah, you also have to check your ego at the door to also be willing to vet that with data and incorporate the full spectrum. And so, yeah, anyways, I want that on my own show. Like, I had a guest who's going to be on this week who is very Chinese medicine, acupuncture, totally out there on that world. Some people maybe not going to like it. This next guest I'm going to have is in data and sports science. And I love that. I want to like take all these pieces of the field, and I want us to be able to, like, I just read The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene, highlighted almost the whole thing. And I want to it's almost like I'm this weird intermediary, because I'm not like hyper creative. I'm definitely not awesome at like calculus and stats, but I think I have this weird thing in me where I can process stuff somewhat well. And so maybe that's my purpose in life, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's true, that it's, the fear of the unknown. And even if you do produce the studies, often it's like, oh, you're cherry picking, like that's the next line as well. So I think there is definitely a big pushback against change, and that's probably going to be a constant. Like, there's a big paradigm shift. It's always, rejected, violently rejected, and then accepted, like at first it's ignored, then it's violently rejected, and then it becomes their idea. You know what I mean? So I think Charles Poliquin, who's a huge influence on me, I think he dealt with a lot of that, like he had a lot of success, and he used different methods, and he believed in a lot of, the Chinese medicine, and he went further into supplementation, and, he used the biosignature method, which is still, massively criticized by a lot of people, but it just, it doesn't really make sense to bash the creative people, because we know that it's going to be different. 10, 20, 30 years from now, our understanding of the human body and performance, I think, is going to be so far from where we are now that people are going to be looking at what we're doing now and thinking, oh, they were missing all this stuff, or that, they were kind of right about this, but the mechanism was completely wrong. You know what I mean? And I think some of that stuff will come from, that more, intuitive stuff and spiritual things, and understanding the energy of the brain and the heart, and like, I think there are areas for growth in that. Even, heart rate variability with Joel Jameson and stuff. It's coming back around to what the yogi said, and what the, like, your heart energy is going to influence, your recovery ability and your ability to live. Like, it's, I think that's what makes it an exciting time as well. There's so much blending together of ideas. What's something that you feel really like intuitive about, that maybe other people aren't necessarily accepting just yet, or interested in pursuing enough?
That's a good question. So, I mean, the area I'm like going towards is, and a lot of my reading the last year has been on, I would guess, I mean, it's just so easy to say, like the mind in training, right? Like, and like one of my guests, Logan Christopher, said, everyone's going to say, oh, it's all mental, but then they don't do anything. Like they just say it's all mental. Like it's almost to like puff up their own brain or something, like, oh, this is so mental. Like I'm such a mental master or something. But then I don't know, are you doing visualization? Are you doing hypnosis? Are you doing like awareness exercises? No, you like people pay credence to that. But I've been around like a good number of coaches who are masters of culture and, buy-in. And then on top of that too, so I have these experiences with these elite coaches in that regards. And then this is the one thing where I think you said it, like it's the blending of spirituality with training. And I think of it this way too, like this was a really a cool, like this was a good step for me on like this ladder of like trying to understand. I'm like, what is this field exactly, right? Like, because in the perfect world, you think if I'm training a team sport, well, the perfect world would be from just a non-spiritual, just black and white point of view. And I'm not saying that this isn't like necessarily the best thing in some, if not many situations, is the sports skill coach is also the strength coach. From a mechanical perspective, that makes the most sense. If I'm a track coach, I should do the weightlifting for my group. Like the more, like we talked about this on our own podcast, the further like you get split up, the worse it gets in terms of efficiency. And you have the strength coach with their agenda, and you have the sports scientist with their agenda in sports medicine. And yes, the more symbiotic that department can be, the better ultimately. And I think that we are advancing towards that as we move into personal development and relational and emotional intelligence and relations and all that as we advance in our system.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I've talked with, and so, I did this podcast with Michael Dango talking about that, getting strong, fundamentally just getting stronger. The process is not that difficult. And then talking with Nick DeMarco, the next podcast, kind of similar type of thing and understanding and talking about him. But I think the fundamental thing that gets left behind in that scenario is the fact that I think the pursuit of strength is almost more of a spiritual pursuit on some levels, or there's a strong spiritual element to it that it's hard to put into words unless you've been through that process yourself. Unless you've either had a mentor, someone who's trained you. To me, my buddy Paul Cater, who owns a gym down in Monterey, he always calls it vibe. Like, is their vibe today? Like, and he is the most like it is the most spiritual training experience of your life to train with this man. I mean, and I could never. And it's funny because it's like it's almost like a beautiful piece of music being improvised. Like the artist might improvise, and you say, "Well, can you do that again?" And they'll, "Okay, I can try."
I love that way of thinking about this. This is that's what it's like, isn't it? It's like painting a masterpiece, like a session that just flows like. It's that artistic side of things, like where you've got the base skills and technical stuff right, and then it's
yeah. So that's where I'm like, and in talking with, it's like, sometimes I'll get pulled like on one side of the pendulum. I'm like, okay, yeah, like maybe this industry is kind of outdated. We need to grow into sport coaches, but then it's like pull back. It's like, wait, like, are we understanding the spiritual ramifications or the holistic ramifications of having someone who is specifically dedicated to training? Yes, you physically, but it's almost like strength and conditioning and personal development almost go hand in hand on many levels. You see the people who are the highest masters of their craft, and there's, especially on, almost maybe even the Gen Pop level in some terms, away from a little bit of the data and sports science world, there's such a personal level of it all. And you could say emotional, easily, but I mean, spiritual. It's there. And so I think that the more that we can understand what that is, why that is, and how that leads someone to achieve their full potential, the more I think we can continually integrate and refine what we're doing. And so where my beliefs and my reading has really traveled is, like some of the books I've read this last year is, the biology belief. Yes. Like with Bruce Lipton. At the same time I was reading, I cannot remember this. The Cure Within. So basically, like placebo-based medicine, the body's ability to heal itself. And so everything that's wired in our system to become great. How do you unlock that in an athlete? And it's more than sets and reps. And especially in my job, where it's like by default, like my first love was coaching track and field, and now I'm in a physical preparation situation. It's like, you do this for enough years and you just want to continually find like pieces to unlock. It's like, rather than splitting hairs on velocity based training and bands and chains and body weight or or whatever, kettlebells or whatever, all the modalities, you can split all the hairs in the world. I just feel like it's a lot more valuable to say, okay, look, like getting strong is the means of getting strong and fairly well established. I think we are learning a few new cool things here and there. Like I know me and you both, have experience with Ben Patrick and with the Poliquin and knees over toes stuff and tendon strength and health and muscle length and all that. And I'm like, that podcast changed me. Like it was awesome. But the overarching thing is like I need to continue to develop this emotional spiritual process that I think is, regardless of your training, is probably the greater piece if you are in what we call a true physical preparation, strength and conditioning setting. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's I 100%, and it is difficult sometimes to be specific when you say this, but often when you shake an athlete's hand, you kind of know who you're dealing with. Like before you see them lift, like you talk about functional movement screens and all this stuff. Sometimes when you just shake a guy's hand, you go, yeah, this guy, like we're all in here, like we're on here, or this is going to be a real challenge to get this guy to work, with me. And he's dealing with some serious emotional stuff. Like sometimes even on the first couple of minutes of a phone call, you go, oh, there's some serious baggage here. You know what I mean? And it's going to impact the training. So like, I think it just opens up new levels if you can clear a path mentally. What have you experienced there for yourself? You're reading this Biology of Belief and The Cure Within. Have you had experiences like this where you really invest in a thought process, in a state, in a belief, and it comes about? You make a shift in yourself, whether it's with training or even something related to business. Like,
that's a good question. So I'll take it from a few angles. One, I'll take it from just like what I've seen in my past. And I always remember these experiences, but they become even more valuable and vivid now. Back when I was a track coach full-time, and I believe that season of my life as a full-time, this is your main job, track and field coach, that was there because that's what I needed to get started, because that was it's your way of referencing, sport and competition, and it's kind of your starting point. And I'm, still a track coach, still love it. It's a huge passion of mine. But I remember I had a significant issue with, I only wanted to coach the best athletes because those were the ones who made me look good. Because, if you have athletes on the podium at nationals, you can hopefully move up the ladder and get the next job in the chain in this whole system that we have. Yep. And I remember in that process, I was leaving kids at the wayside, basically just writing a kid's workout and saying, do it. and not even thinking that would have an impact on that person, just kind of popping my head in. Okay, how's your workout going? Cool. Like, then I go back out to my 6'11" high jumper who's maybe could win nationals, and just this incredibly immature and very strong lack of awareness. And I had these athletes would struggle. And I remember just one of these athletes, one day I walked in and she was doing like some jumps in the gym or something like that. And she just like almost started crying. And maybe she did. And I asked her about it. And then she basically was telling me how I don't remember exactly how it broke down, but I was just really ignoring her and just writing her a workout. And there was zero attention given to her. Like, so all the mechanics were there. I felt like I wrote good workouts. Sure. Like, cool. Yeah, but you completely ignore a person and she was doing terrible. And so
it's a great bottom line for a young coach, right? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. And so what happened is she ended up going with, working with my who was my boss, the head coach, who was the distance coach. So not like a big high jump guy, but he gave her attention and instantly, like literally like the snap of my fingers was jumping 3 or 4 inches higher, like went from 4'6" to almost jumping 5 feet, zero change in the work. And you could just tell there was just energy in her, how she moved. And I was like, whoa. Like, I mean, at the same time, I wasn't like super concerned at the same point but I was like, whoa, like that, it was kind of heavy. And so then I'm a full-time strength coach now. And I fully believe this, that the reason that this is my job right now is because I had to learn to go from, if you're the head coach, head sport coach, I think there's more like, your athletes do well. That's good for you. Look at my athletes doing well. Look at how good of a coach I am. If you are the strength coach, you are a little bit more of a support role now. It's not so much like, yes, it's good to get people stronger and all this, but you're almost a behind the scenes person. You aren't the first person that people, Duke does awesome at basketball. People are looking at, Coach K. Coach K is the man. He's awesome. And Coach K is, I have huge respect for the man. He's awesome, but I don't even know who the strength coach for Duke basketball is. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like like, so it's almost like, life has taken me this role where it's like, you are behind the scenes now. You need to learn how to nurture athletes from without any recognition really for yourself. It's all about you and them and the relationship and what you can give to them. And so, within that scope too, I just see, like, I see the processes of, yes, like little placebo instilling almost effects that I've seen some coaches give to athletes. And there's that. It's reframed my mind with like my men's swim team does a really difficult circuit. It's almost like an initiation. It is an initiation, basically. They do this difficult circuit every year. And I think if you're just a pure like numbers person, you'd be like, well, this circuit is dumb. It's not really getting any training done. It's, it's this, that, and the other thing. But it's totally the cultural and spiritual element of it that is much more valuable. And I think, every year I go through that. Like, I bought the book, The Archetype of Initiation, by Robert Moore, I think it is. And it's just, you learn like how we grow up, and these figures in our life, they're almost tribal figures in a sense. And you look at how all that factors into it all, and just always looking behind what we would typically look at as X's and O's has been valuable. And then moving forward, like you said, I have paid so much more belief or attention to, I would call it almost like self-worth and training outcomes. And that's the big one. It's like, you work with someone whose self-worth is extremely low. Whatever you want to accomplish in training, your mind will grant you that wish. If your self-worth gives you a particular picture of yourself, that's pretty much your ceiling. And I think that's why a lot of coaches are going into the personal development. They're tired. I think especially like in the private, like just training sector for like, general pop, like people are just sick of training people to see them, just they'll leave them and go back to the old results, or they just aren't seeming to get results. But it all starts with your belief system about yourself. And so to me, it's like you think about that one little thing the coach told an athlete that was just at the right time to make them believe in themselves. And I had a coach like that. He just passed away this past year, but a coach like that when I was in college, and there's no way I would have jumped 7 feet without him, because he just was a master of planting these little seeds of self-belief that would raise what you think you were capable of doing. And it had nothing to do with sets and reps and training, but it had everything to do with instilling belief. And so I'm always thinking about that as I go throughout training, and how do I encourage and how do I help people believe in themselves, and how do I overcome this, like, we also live in this functional movement screen world or whatever, not just FMS, but any system that assesses and corrects, and how easy it is as a physical prep coach to tell an athlete a million things wrong with them. Like, what is everything you are doing giving to their self-worth?
It's like objectification as well, isn't it? Like, it's like you're this, you're these numbers and this data set, where sometimes, like what you've seen there with that athlete jumping another 2-3 inches, like that's also a big part of what we need to be looking for. Yes, we need to get the session right, but if the team comes together because of experiences that they go through, even if that experience is not necessarily the most, the best one backed by sports science, if that brings your swim team together and they all love each other and they're excited to see each other every day, then, how do they get the training done? How do they push for their times in the pool if they're feeling that, that connection to each other? Like I think it's a great, point that you're making there, Joel. And I feel as though too many people are just overly emphasizing, the techniques and looking for what's the next technique that I need to learn, where it's this underpinning philosophy and belief set that is ultimately going to make the biggest difference. Like that's, so much power in that realization. On the initiation side, I love that concept. Like, do you feel as though you had some rites of passage type experience as an athlete? You've sort of spoken about there as a coach, having that rite of passage of, being the head of a program and then kind of going through this stage of being more of a supportive role as you see it with your strength role. Like, what about as an athlete? Like, did you kind of have those moments?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked me that, actually, because I think that I always think about this, like, I feel like, well, just as society in general, we have as men, and I think there's different, if you look at the tribal, there's probably different things for men and women, but I know men in particular, and a lot of this talk about, and rightly so, like men have there's nothing formal we have to do to become a man. Like there's no threshold we ever have to cross in our life. It's all
not
given
anymore,
to you.
Right? There have been in the past.
You're 10, here's a smartphone. I don't know. Here's some processed food, that you like, I hope you like it. It's just the whole 9 yards. And there's never anything and life is comfortable. And like you've talked about with your farm, we never see death. We're never exposed to anything that's like, it's like, oh, God forbid. Like I remember in Berkeley, we have a lot of homeless people here. And there was like a homeless person died about 6 months ago on the street, which is not necessarily completely uncommon, but it's like the second that happens, like police lines all around, no one can see the body. Like we just hide from that stuff. Like, and so I am the epitome of someone who came up through the ultimate comfortable, hyper comfortable. My parents never maybe even get a job. It was just crazy because I think they were so like, oh, Joel shows athletic promise. Like, let's, really, we don't want to like maybe sidetrack him. And my mom did my laundry for me till I was like 17 or 18. And I was pissed when I had to do it myself. Like just unreal how like I was, if anything, my rite of passage was being in a giant bubble until you always have those little moments of crisis. Like I think my first, some that I remember along the lines, like going even like just how lackadaisical I was, like going into grad school. I'm like, oh, I should probably go to grad school next year, last year of formal college in this completely, in my mind, defunct, by the way, educational system where you have to go basically 6 years to learn the bare minimum, pay a lot. And I don't know, people have jobs because of it. So I guess, everyone's got to have a job and all that. And I did learn things along the way, and I'm grateful for my college athletic and coaching experiences, a lot of experiences, but like, it's like, oh, you have to go to grad school next year. And I was like, okay, I sent my applications in. I was like, I think my classmates are taking this thing called the GRE. I'm like, what is that? And then I'm applying to a school. And it's like, oh yeah, you have to take this like this was already past due. You should have taken this last week and it's the cutoff. And if you want to go to grad school, you had to have it in. So I'm like on the phone with these schools, like, hey, I'll take it next week. Can I still apply? And just like my life was almost like perpetually like that for so long. Just zero responsibility. And I think it finally all caught up to me basically at this point where it's like, okay, Joel, maybe you grew up to be, you're not a child anymore. Cause I was thoroughly a child until at least my mid 20s. I think that the breaking point was really, almost losing my job basically, or just coming to this, really difficult point with my boss at my job at Wilmington, because I wasn't doing a very good job recruiting. Like I think I thought that it was just all going to be handed to me once you get your foot in the door at coaching. And just like, I think a lot of like relationship stuff and just being socially and emotionally smart and just knowing how to basically do a good job. And so anyways, I think that just woke me up. And I also had this like vision of like, okay, wait a second. You don't just get a job, go to school and get a job and just go up this nice clean ladder. And it's just this happy land the whole way through. It's like, it was at that point, and I had known to myself for a while that I wanted to like start a website and a formal blog and formally be a writer and get my thoughts out there. Cause I'd actually been writing since I've been 23 on just like a blogger type thing. Like I've always liked to write. It was just more of a fun, casual thing. It was very sporadic. But at that point, I'm like, yes, I've gone this far, and the best next step is maybe a mid-major Division I assistant, if that, where I'm still going to get paid nothing and work a ton. And it's just, you start to look at what this future thought is. And it's like, okay, I need to start this website. So I got together with my business partner. I was like, I'm going to do it. And then it was like this energy ignited in me where all of a sudden, and I started to drink coffee too, but like this energy ignited in me. Like I had the energy to stay up till midnight writing and do everything else in my day job and do it as best as I could. That next year, I think I got about 8 times the number of kids into my recruiting classes I did my first year. It was like this huge step into real life. And so it was like the first experience. And it's almost like, and then the things that I think have come more so along the way too is like, and I think a lot of us just like a lot of strength coaches get in this or even sport coaches. Why did you get into sport coaching? Well, because I'm really competitive and I still want to validate myself. And so those walls slowly breaking down, being a strength and physical prep coach has been the important one, because it's like, okay, Joel, like you're not going to stand up there and shake your athlete who won nationals hand. Like, and everyone's going to see that's not the point of this existence. This is what you're doing. And so for me to slowly but surely realize that and take that on and go through athletes' journeys through their 4 years, Not even in my sport. I don't even work as a strength coach for track anymore. I coach club track. I absolutely love it, but it's with kids, and that's taught me an immense amount with children, like working with children. And so I'm seeing all these other areas. It's like life is just bringing these things into my place. But the sad thing is I really haven't had a formal, like, I guess you could call it tribal, like mentorship that forced. It's just been what life has given me. And it's just in this slow burn that's made me who I am. But so anyways, kind of a long ramble, but that's how the story of why I'm here, why I'm talking right now.
We got a lot of common ground there. You know, I put myself on a journey, and I wanted to, you know, I had bank cards with me. I wanted to turn up my credit cards when I was backpacking through Latin America to just have challenging, real experiences. But it was challenging and real enough. Like, but I had to do that to kind of feel like I was becoming a man, and you know what I mean? Like, I'd had that comfortable upbringing as well in sports, and I think we have a lot in common there. I started to ride at the same age, and we have a similar age and the same last name, so it's you're a JK, a lot of things. You're a JS and I'm a KS, so we've got a lot in common, man. But so I think that's such a huge thing, like that. You know, where is the challenge? And people kind of feeling entitled because they haven't been through a real challenge and never being put in their place by an elder. You know, I think that's a huge thing. Like, sometimes now, you know, with my role is mentoring. Like, sometimes I really have to be strong with someone and say, look, this is not good enough. And they can either just run away and, you know, like stop being part of what I'm doing, or they actually take it as as that kind of almost fatherly figure. Like, I know I have been a fatherly figure for a lot of guys because they just they haven't had dads, you know, like they've never had that, you know what I mean? Some of them have, and they just haven't been that present or whatever as well. But like, I think there's a huge part. And I think by having your own insight into that, when you work with a kid, you can go, oh yeah, this kid's me when I was younger, or this kid's actually got his shit together a little bit earlier because he's had some hard times, you know, and he's had to wash his own stuff since he was 8 years old because things were tough at his house, you know, like you can see both sides of that sort of thing once you're more aware of your own, you know, upbringing and what formed you. I love that you touched on getting into your business there. I think that is an obvious realization for anyone who's intelligent in the area of, you know, strength science, sports science, performance coaching, etc. You realize at some stage a degree is very expensive, but it's relatively easy and common to get. It's not necessarily going to get you a great job. Even if you get a PhD, there's no guarantee of any income really on the other side of that. So you have this realization that the jobs aren't very well paid. They're very volatile. You have to pay a lot of money to be able to qualify for one. And then, you know, like, oh, actually, I wouldn't mind having a family one day, and I wouldn't mind being able to, you know, pay the bills. So it's, I think it's a realization that a lot of people go through. And in the modern age, everyone's branding, everyone's, you know, a lot of people are producing content and that sort of thing. Like, how do you go with being both a commercial brand, you know, and being that, you know, legit school coach? Like, do you get criticized, or do you feel challenged by the commercial aspect of your life? You know, some people will say you're a sellout as soon as you have a product. How do you deal with that side of things?
No, that's a good question. I think so. Right off the bat, I try to actually keep the two as separate as possible. Like, I would never want anyone to like follow me because of the school I work at, basically. Like, I know it gives, you know, more credibility and things like that, but I know like a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, I worked with I worked with Kobe Bryant. Like, so I was a strength coach for Michael Jordan. I was a strength coach for, like, I am the last person who wants to be like that. I mean, and to be honest, I've worked with some very high achieving athletes, but I'm not going to go around saying, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good because I work. You know what? Think I'm good because maybe I was able to instill confidence in a 10-year-old, you know, like, and make them believe in themselves and have fun, you know, doing their sport instead of maybe their parents like kind of being a validation thing. Like, maybe like me because of that, you know, or like me because I brought a guest on my podcast who made you sparked your intuition and you came up with something creative that was awesome on your own. I think that, so for me, it's very natural in the sense of like, I can't, once I've sparked the fact, like starting your own business, I think it's a mark of that transition from child to adult or child to warrior. If you're like in the warrior, king, queen archetype, like,
yep.
Like you're not a child anymore because I think you can easily be a child if you go to school. Okay, all these people help you get a job. The career people said, help me with my resume. You're in a job that is basically like still people making the rules for you. Still everything's still assigned for you. There's still no personal. You never had to get outside the box and really truly do it yourself.
Yep.
And so. And I know it's interesting, like, and I think we're being thrown into this. Like I saw a stat, like in 10 years, like a huge percentage of the world's gonna be freelancers, just with the way the economy is going. And I think that's good. Like, and so it's doing that just sparked. It made such a huge wholesale change in me and just how I fundamentally saw everything. That like I said, my last year, I also had the biggest recruiting class I ever had. Like it was just this insane spark of confidence that made me really truly believe in myself. And on top of it too, you just feel more now, whether this is my own personal business or whether this is university work, it doesn't matter. Everything is more weighted because you realize that the business is actually you as a person, is the growth of you, your soul, your spirit, your mind, everything. That's the highest priority. And whether it's university or the personal business, thank you. The personal business just helps. It's a financial help for sure. And I think even if there was no like personal business, financially, if like my life was just to be the best, like Domino's pizza box or ever, I want to be like that guy in the commercials who is making 100 boxes in 30 seconds. Like it just has to be pure growth. And like, regardless of what you do, I mean, and I'll say this too. I mean, I think that it's easy to say I don't think everyone is necessarily cut out to be their own boss. I do think but I have such tremendous respect for, like, I'm riding the bus to work 2 days ago, and there's, I live in Berkeley, so there's a lot of like mentally, people with like mental issues who are homeless, and they'll go on the bus and they'll just give the bus driver the hardest time and just cuss them out. And everyone getting on the bus is getting ticked off. But this bus driver just handles it super professionally. He's patient. He knows exactly what to do. I was like, and after this one situation, I like told the bus driver, I was like, dude, you are such a professional. like, good for you. Like, if I was doing that job, I would want to be like you. And you inspired me today because of what you did. So, I mean, no discredit for the people who don't have that wiring to be an entrepreneur. Cause I mean, I have it. I just didn't realize it till life slapped me in the face. But I just think, what am I, no matter what, how is my soul spirit? How am I growing? And whatever it takes to trigger that, like, until then, I think we're all kind of living in the matrix a little bit,
It does trigger growth, right? It's I think so many people are paralyzed by the fear of what other people are going to say, that they don't even really say anything. And I think for a long time would always quote other people's stuff, and I still do. And I think that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but I would hide behind, well, this guy says this guy says this guy says. I wouldn't back my own experience around things until I really bought into this role, and then you start to, actually stand for what what you believe in and that sort of thing. And that's an ongoing journey for sure for me. But I think when you decide to have a business, you have to have an opinion. Like, you have to put yourself out there to an extent, and that means your head's on the chopping block to an extent as well, right? Like, have you had any real, like, what have been the biggest challenges around, the hardest times around having your own business? What's the dark side? Because everyone's talking about the brightness, and, Vanderchuck telling everybody just, work 15-hour days, 18-hour days, 20-hour days for the next 5 years, and you might start making $60,000 a year or something. Like, what's the reality? What's the dark side of, having your own business for you?
Yeah, I think the dark side's probably different for everyone. Like you mentioned Vaynerchuk, like it's hard to imagine anyone who works that much, but like you look at balance, like how is your life balanced? And so for me, the biggest one has been just for me, like before, it's like Joel's validation is as an athlete. Like if I can high jump 7 feet, I feel like life is good. If I had a practice where I could barely clear 6, I'm like incredibly depressed. And not incredibly depressed, but I mean, for me, like I'm generally, like, my mood's pretty up there, but like for me, I'm very like down in the dumps, and it's coming from this, like, basically, like, if you can't do this as an athlete, where's your worth? What else what are you on this earth for? And so originally it was getting over that. Like, look, I am not my muscles or my tendons or my ability to project myself, 4 feet off the ground in this rock that's 7,000 miles. Like, who cares? Like, whatever. Like, but then I actually, and this is where I'm seeing it now, is like, if it's a day and I haven't sold a few books in a while, I get really bummed. My wife will be like, man, Joel, you're really bummed out. Like, And like, I'm like, wait, why am I bummed out? Oh yeah, it's because, and it's like, it just sinks in. It doesn't, I don't even think about it. So, and one of the things I love about, like, if I'm training somebody and they, if you, in the private business, if you train someone and they hand you some money, you feel good about yourself. And so there's like all that, but I realize a lot of that, like for me with the business side of things, if I'm getting money, it's like, well, ultimately training people is training people. And it's nice. The flow of money is awesome. Like absolutely. It's always a blessing. But at the end of the day, I think I've found that like I've validated myself because I grew up with parents who were very like anti, it's bad to be rich. Rich people are greedy. That whole rigmarole that was planted in my subconscious that I've had to work through, hypnosis and the whole 9 yards of that, which actually has been incredibly helpful. But like, it's almost like now I'm like, I want to prove my parents wrong. I want to prove that I can make money. I want to prove that I'm worth this. And I'm dealing through that, right? Like that's my dark side, is putting so much validation in that and realizing like, look, money is just energy flow. Like the more love you have, the bigger your cup, it's just, your needs will be taken care of. And the growth of your soul is the most important. And that's where I'm really working through right now. And so I think to me, it's just, it has been that. But lately, originally it was just being too much of a perfectionist. Perfectionism is a big part of mine too. Like I will spend a lot longer on a podcast pre-roll than a lot of people would think sometimes. Like
this one's going to go live probably today, Joel. And it's you don't have any room for mistakes that we had in your podcast. So yeah, we definitely have different ways of doing those sorts of things. But yeah, that perfectionist side is probably part of the reason why you've done so well. But then the other side, yeah, it's not always the easiest to live with yourself, right?
It's a killer, yeah. And I will say, it's like, oh, I don't care what people think about me. No, I do, because I look at how long I take to do the pre-roll sometimes. But it's just me. It's just like, I want to make sure. It's like, did I give this client the due diligence in introducing them? And I don't want to sound like there is still. So it's like, that is the part that runs under my own radar, and just like, so perfectionism, and then just attaching myself, moving past athletic validation to now it's like Lewis Howes the masks, right? For a while it was the athlete mask. Okay, finally took that off, thank God. And now it's the money mask, and now I take that one off, and now it's the next one. I don't know, but at least those two masks are gone, so I have however many more to go through in my life. See.
Yeah, I think like either extreme with the money stuff of like, I'm all about the money, or I don't need to make any money. Like I see both as a real problem. Like I probably see more people with I don't need to make any money. Like I just want to help people. It's like, well, actually you can't help anyone because you can't afford to do anything. Like you can't go anywhere. You can't get educated. You don't even buy ebooks because you don't, you have no money. Like that means, and that also is a symptom of you're not helping anybody. Like you're actually not helping anybody. It's the people who people are willing to invest in are the ones that people are actually listening to the most as well, right? So it's I think it's a big challenge to be okay, to make a lot of money, but stay creative and don't be driven by the money. Like I think that is the game. Like when you have a lot of money, you can do a lot of things. Like I was laying in bed this morning doing my breathing stuff, and I'm thinking, I remember now, I wanted to run schools. Like I wonder what it's like to actually buy an orphanage or take over an orphanage, and like, how would we run that thing? Like, how would they train? What would they eat? What would the education be like for those kids? And that's a problem that my wife and I have spent time, thinking about, speaking about. I've got 2 beautiful children. I know, I worked in an orphanage in Guatemala for a while. Some of those kids had seen their parents get killed. It's not cool. Like it's not their fault, those kids' fault. Like what could we do for those kids? Like, and I've, Joe Rogan's had some good podcasts recently where they start to talk about answering those questions, whether it's, with universal basic income and those sorts of things, or just really creating good systems for the people who don't, haven't been given the best opportunity. Like why should they not have a great opportunity because they've been born into that environment? I think if I can bring myself into financial abundance, like there's going to be this stuff, like I don't care if I'm still wearing the same jacket. Like people who know me know that I'm wearing the same stuff. Like my $1,000 car is broken in the driveway. Like it's not about the money, but at the same time, I want to be filthy rich, and that's even a stupid word in itself, right? But I want to have a lot of abundance because I can go and build these places, these performance centers, for disadvantaged people and that sort of thing. And like that excites the hell out of me. So I'll get up and I'll keep working 100-hour weeks until that happens, or until my wife tells me slow down a little bit, and that's probably the other challenge as well. But you probably feel a little bit of that as well with having those, different compartments in your life. I think that there's so much there to unpack around money and the journey that the business takes you on. But we'd probably, we're not going to get to cover everything today. And I did want to really touch on your knowledge on tendons and your experience around feet and Achilles and knees, tendons, because obviously as a jumper, you're going to have challenges with that, like jumper's knee and Achilles tendon. Like every jumper is probably going to experience that at some stage. And that we're both good friends with Ben Patrick now, and it looks like Real Movement's going to have a tight sort of partnership going forward with him. And I'm very excited about that because I feel like there's a ton of value there. I would love to hear your a little bit about what you've learned through the challenges of Achilles pain.
Yeah, no, that's I'm glad you mentioned this. It's a little bit different than our talk so far, but I'm glad we got to this because I'm like super excited about this. And again, it's one of those points where it's like, look, this will happen in my life for a reason. Just like with Ben, where his knees were trashed before his we turned 20 or before he found like the Charles Poliquin methods and really made that his own and worked there.
Yep.
I've had Achilles pain ever since I was about like 25, 26. And I remember like I still competed in track and field and high jump until I was about 27, 28. My last competition was when I was 29. Then I kind of hung it up because I realized that because of my Achilles, I just couldn't do the training I needed to be the athlete that I was when I was jumping 7 feet. And I'm like, if I can't do this, I just need to do some other things. And I found rock climbing and pursued that. And some of the, we've talked about those types of things on the podcast we did before. So, but it was just like, there's something about like just jumping and bouncing and bounding that is pure joy. And I know like if you look at like the mind body somatic stuff with Alexander Lowen and that came out, I think like the 60s, 70s, that stuff is like, there's just something that's joyful to me about that. Like, yes, I love lifting, but the way I'm wired, like I love to move and sprint and jump and dance and do all these more like I'm not naturally quite as strong. That's not an excuse. I mean, my lifts are okay, but anyways, so through the last few years, particularly in my mentorship with the Darian Barr, who is just an insane expert, not like he's insane, but like that word being like how good he is with the foot. I've never met anyone who's even close. Like we were talking about like a lot of people just competing and over generally the kind of the same thing, same areas against each other. Darian is just totally outside of that. And so through a lot of his work through both his work and then getting into like some Marvin Rinovich and PVC pipe training stuff, I had a cool conversation with Olympic high jumper Amy Acuff on her work with Marvin Rinovich and the PVC pipe stuff and how alive her feet would feel. And just after perpetually playing with all this stuff for a while, I came to realize, okay, like, yes, well, the feet are crucial. I think I've realized that for a long time, but through a Darian, I've learned to realize exactly what components you're looking for. Yep. And it all came full circle when this combination of doing PVC pipe work, which I found made an immediate impact in my tendon health, which is crazy.
How do you do that? Like I've actually seen some of Marv's stuff, but maybe people, and it's very innovative and I really, really love it. But people who are listening in, like, what are we talking about? What are you doing with that PVC pipe?
Yeah. So, and I've actually tried to figure out why it works. Well, first off, what do you do? 4-inch diameter PVC pipe, just a little bit longer than your feet. And all I did, honestly, was just play around standing on it. I would stand on the 2 pipes barefoot. I would do squats. I would do calf raises. I would maybe squat side to side. I would try to scoot them back and forth a little bit. Yep. Roll your feet inside, outside. Just play around. There's no magic in the sets and reps and positions. I think, if I create a system out of it one day, I have to, I guess, because that's just how it is. But at the end of the day, just playing is fine. And so after doing that, just a couple sessions, I noticed just waking up the next day, I had no Achilles pain. Whereas typically those first few steps would always be sore and bad. And like,
how long would you play on there for when those first few sessions? Like, were you doing like half an hour or 10 minutes or?
Just like 5 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, cool. 5 minutes.
And so
pretty good bang for your buck.
Yeah, one of the best. And now so I'm in this cool thing too with my training sessions now. I'll say like, okay, here's my warm up. 3 minutes, play with PVC pipes. 3 minutes, play with Indian clubs. 3 minutes, play with ground-based movement. 3 minutes, play on handles and bars. The end, now go work out. So PVC pipe, just playing around has been one of the things. And I've just been trying to figure out why. Because, we look at things like Bosu ball and balance training and like, there's what is that doing? And so what I've kind of wrapped my mind around a little bit is, the reason my Achilles is messed up, and this is what I learned from Adarian, is I've lost calcaneal motion. My calcaneus doesn't evert and invert like it used to. It's a little bit more fixed. And if you're in a shoe, and especially as that shoe gets older, your heel starts to sink, your calcaneus starts to sink down into the bottom, and it becomes even more of a cast than it was before. And so now all the force is really going right to your Achilles. It's more sagittal plane focused.
Yep.
And so that builds that. And it's like, I think, the knees over toe stuff and Ben's work is absolutely freaking incredible. I've found that the Achilles stuff, you can't just solve Achilles with strength. I think it's more, there is a finesse to the joint motion. There's a finesse to the way the ankle moves that will transfer these 10, 12 times forces correctly into your Achilles. So it's a combination of strength and proprioception and footwear, because the foot is very triplanar.
Yeah.
And so that has been, and as well as Adarian's, I was actually trying to send you a picture of these, but Adarian's made some special heel inserts that help your calcaneus to see, sense, and feel and move. And so those are available on his website, and they're game changers. So it's like a combination of those things that has helped me to, like, I can go, if I go run a 200, like 5 200s over hurdles with those inserts in my heels, no pain the next day. If I run it without, I'm getting out of bed and I'm hurting.
Send me the link on those. That sounds super interesting. And that's a massive outcome. It's being able to sprint versus not being able to sprint. So you're saying, like, obviously the strength and strength through length and building tissue tolerance, Charles Poliquin, his contribution with structural balance, which a lot of coaches have run with in different ways. And, there's a lot of different Poliquin guys who I, respect a lot and have learned a lot from. And, Ben's one who's been super innovative going towards jumping, which is, kind of an interesting direction that not a lot of, Poliquin inspired a lot of people who wanted to have big biceps as well and big guys and that kind of thing. So, like, that's what makes Ben a bit of an anomaly, I think, in the Poliquin student kind of realm. But talk to us then about, how does that proprioception, I know we're nearly going to finish up here, proprioception, calcaneal function, like, is that coming through the balance component of the PVC pipe, or is there other stuff there that was really making a difference to you, do you think, beyond that?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how much the pipe actually helped with the calcaneus moving, because it can, if you tilt your feet to the side, invert and evert, it can get moving. It can feed that joint a little bit of movement. I'm like, well, maybe it's that. There's a few kind of things that I've thought about, right? Like, one of the things I think about that it might do is, I know my right Achilles or ankle is way worse than my left. My left toes are much more packed together. Like Adarian Bars talked about, that transverse arch is a lot tighter, more packed. My right transverse arch is much looser because I've sprained my ankle multiple times on my right foot. And those sprains have caused a little bit of spreading of the foot. And so I do think that perhaps the intrinsic muscle activation that's required when doing PVC pipe work has maybe helped me to get a little tighter foot, and a foot that moves and senses just good enough to send force through the Achilles better. I'm still, honestly, I've had a few conversations with different people who actually aren't a big fan of the PVC from, the perspective they're looking at it from. I just know it's worked. And so I think it's something to do with the intrinsic foot muscle activation, the nervous activation, and then the different angles you can hit.
Because you think it could spread the foot and the arch as well, as it can strengthen it, definitely, because your arch is burned. I've played around with that stuff a bit as well, so it's definitely strengthening. But then maybe because in the movement kind of world, and I've done a lot of work with Ido Portal and guys that are down that kind of train, like they want these feet that are like kind of not
like caveman.
Ido does, but a lot of movement people want the toes really splayed, and not look like they've been jammed in little shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think there is the spectrum. I mean, you call it health and performance. And, I'm an N of one, right? Like, I will say this, I've gotten, I know it's just a PVC and who knows the mechanics, but Allison Wood's a high jumper who I've trained, who online, she's 45 and set the women's world record in the 45 division. And she had really bad Achilles problems when she came to me. And although the main solution was just stop wearing socks as often as you can for all training, because socks reduce sensation and your foot can't move as well. And then therefore the Achilles is going to take more, and then PVC pipe work. And those were totally and I don't know, maybe there's a guru effect in there. I feel, like I said, belief system too.
Yeah.
I tell you to do this. Okay, cool. But totally like resolved her Achilles and she went and set that world record. And so, but I do, so N of one, I can just tell you my right foot is looser. I've had a really bright guy from the city, Charlie Reed, work on my foot too. He's like, yeah, your foot is a lot looser on this side. So I don't know what I think you can do a pipe to spread out your foot for sure. I always try to actually not let my toes, like I try to keep my foot kind of tight and packed intentionally as I can on it. I don't know. I'm not sure of the mechanics, but maybe I'll continue to train and think about it and get back to you. I am finishing up a book on the subject of foot training in general, and especially for a lot of Achilles people out there. I think it's pretty thorough. It goes through all the stuff and then the foot stuff, the shoe stuff, the strength stuff. And I hope it helps a lot of people's lives because jumping and running is awesome, and Achilles really gets in the way of that. So
I'm feeling you on that, and I think that's a good message to finish on because you're doing so much work to help people, and the quality of the work that you're putting out, the message that you're getting out to the world is such a powerful one. And yeah, I appreciate that you're putting more effort into getting more information out about the foot and the heel, and everything that you do, Joel, is I think pushing forward creative thinking and open-mindedness, and not ignoring the data, but at the same time, not ignoring that maybe there's some stuff we don't know yet. I love that about the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you making some time for me. This morning, we started a little bit earlier than I planned, so that's why I'm sitting here. I was sitting in the dark as we started because it's still dark here in Australia and it's cold as well. But amazing to have you on. I'm very, very excited to share this with my audience. And if you got a ton out of this today, make sure you go on and check out Joel's stuff. He's definitely got some creative materials there. His ebook is next level, and he's helped a lot of people to jump to high levels. He's saying he doesn't like mentioning names, but I can tell you that there's definitely a lot of results. And I was put onto Joel's work by people who know what they're talking about and who really love what Joel does as well. So make sure you get into Joel's material and give him some feedback on today's podcast. Thank you for making some time for me today. And I really look forward to having you on again and going a bit deeper. I know there's so many topics we didn't quite get to today. So if you'd like to hear another podcast with Joel, make sure you tell him as well. And then maybe I'll be able to convince him to take a few more minutes with me at some stage.
Yeah. Awesome, Keegan. Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to talking again.
Champion. Thank you. See you, mate.